sure that everyone is fully in the meeting before we launch. For those of you who don't know what this meeting's about, you're living under a rock, but it is cybersecurity, and especially cybersecurity in 2025. Is your company fully prepared? This is becoming more and more prevalent as the days progress. Interesting enough, just recently, unfortunately, you can't turn the news on without looking at something that's a bad news item. And a lot of the stuff that we're getting is very adversarial, very attack oriented, be it one group against another. And I think that plays into the whole cybersecurity and whatnot. We just recently, there was the attack from onto the TD Bank, and the TD Bank in the States got hacked. Interesting enough, TD Bank being Crown Dominion, but they're the largest bank in America currently, and they got hacked. So we're joined today by two experts in the field, and they'll be kind of like walking us through the not only the attacks, but how to prevent them. I think that's more than necessary. The company in question is CentreCoreAI, and we've got Anthony and Kobe here, who I can say from an association standpoint, we've had a long-standing relationship with the OGCA. They've worked with us in order to prepare us, and therefore it was, I think, necessary for us to then provide that information to our members to ensure that everyone is prepared when it comes down to cyber attacks and whatnot. For all of those participating, if you'd like, you can submit questions into the chat section or the Q&A section that's found along the top section. Just submit them, and we'll try and intersperse them throughout the conversation. But please, there'll be time at the end to kind of surmise if need be. So let's start off with like the first most prevalent question. Why is cybersecurity so important today? I'm going to throw it out to our guest speakers. Welcome, gentlemen. What do you have to enlighten us today?
Well, cybersecurity is really important for numerous reasons. It's actually to protect all your digital assets and networks. It is prevalent to be a force to be installed in any business or any institution that wants to protect their digital information. And if you don't have a cybersecurity platform, whether it being conventional or AI based, you're definitely playing with some sort of fire with the most recent attacks that are occurring. This is really, really important that everybody understands the importance of having a cybersecurity platform installed in their institution. It's really, really important. And it boils down to, what you think your information is worth. Because if you want to get insurance coverage, you want to get ahead of the game in terms of protecting your information. And if you don't, there are consequences.
Absolutely. And I find that, again, just, anecdotal information and experience, they can come pretty sophisticated, the attacks and whatnot. I can personally say a number of years ago, I received an email from one of my board of directors. Innocuous, and funny enough, I was expecting an email from this board of director. When I went to go open up the attachment that they had sent me, all of a sudden my entire contact list was wiped, the whole 9 yards. It was chaos, and it wasn't, funny enough, their system had been hacked. They then piggybacked and utilized that to attack our entire network. It was pandemonium, and it was all very and it looked legit. And so, I'm assuming that this is the kind of stuff that other people are facing on the regular. I'd like to consider myself, internet savvy, but I felt like a Luddite at that point in time. So can you kind of walk us through what are the most common types of cyber attacks?
There are phishing emails. Let's start with emails. Emails is broken down into various types of attacks that occur through emails. The most prevalent are phishing and spam. Phishing, realistically, is a very powerful weapon in terms of ascertaining credentials, financial information, exploits, banking information to get access into the banks. So they try to fool or personify themselves as a legitimate person on the other side, either representing an establishment or a company, and then follow through with a phishing attack, pretending that they are this most important person to ascertain the information or credentials to the account. And once that happens, the repercussions are that bank accounts get empty or a ransomware gets on, and then you have to pay obviously a ransom for that digital information to be given back, and the list goes on. There are different types of attacks in terms of phishing. Spearing is one where they go after a specific division of a company, such as finance or accounting, which is a group of people or individual. Whaling is going after a CEO, attacking the CEO account, where they again want prevalent information with respects to the organization, any way that they can get their hands on for financial gain.
So I have a quick question on that one for both of you. Is it because we have email addresses on our websites? Is it like, do they go in and scrape them? Is that a means for us to protect ourselves, to remove like any email signature that we would have on our sites? I'm just curious because I know, as I noted, not only did I get screwed up by being like, this, I guess it was someone else got hacked and then I got Trojan horse or whatever the case may be. But the I've had a number of contractors when I was with sewer and water main. They were the victims of ransom. And it's interesting because they got in. Now the company said that they were able to use a backup from the week before and all that stuff, but then there's another week of work that they had to like input into the system. I don't think that is the easiest, especially if you've got a lot of transactions during the day. So what is it like? What can a company do, especially because they keep changing, and I'm assuming that AI is also involved in this, and that it's for a human to be able to cope with the amount of or the, I guess the speed and the volume of the attacks is getting harder and harder.
Yeah, I mean, I could take that one a bit, Anthony. You're absolutely right. The where the phishing attacks and where these attacks start from or stem from is unlike before. Before you would get an email, even if you weren't that savvy, you can kind of tell that this email looks kind of suspicious. But now the game has changed, and the folks or the entities that can do an attack, the bar has lowered significantly because they can use AI to impersonate somebody using, I could just feed in a few emails from Giovanni, pretend to be him, spoof his email address, and away I go. That's one way of getting to, what we'd call a whale attack. But other more significant ways is actually targeting employees who have a larger internet presence. And that's basically a growing number as the demographic of employee becomes more internet based. There's a lot of remote workers. There's a lot of younger demographics coming in. The increase, the sort of the surface area of attack for a bad actor now is massive, and it's only growing. Um, where does these email addresses get captured from? Like you said, scraping of internet information, your LinkedIn, your social media. Um, if I, for example, understand that one of the email addresses of an employee is, you know, last name dot first name at company.com, now I kind of already have an understanding of what the other email addresses may be like. And I could weasel my way in by building a relationship with one employee that looks and sounds sound and genuine from the company, and then make my way in, build a rapport, and do the final attack that goes towards the executive or the C level.
So I have a specific kind of email or attack. I know I just want to make sure that our audience and the members understand the sophistication of some of this stuff. So I've heard through our membership, they've got one situation where there was someone who looked like the CEO or something communicating with accounting and said, "Oh, instead of this account, change it to this account pay this amount, blah, blah, blah. It looked completely legit. And it
Mhm.
wasn't until probably 30 days or so afterward where you've got the supplier or something saying, how come we haven't received payment? And they were like, what are you talking about? We provided payment. Here's your invoice number. Here's your payment date. Here's your receive date. Here's the account we put it in. They're like, this isn't us. And I'm like that level of sophistication scares the bejeebus out of me. You know, is that the kind of thing? And these attacks that you're talking about, these are only the ones that we know of today.
Exactly. Exactly.
So like
It's
this is the
growing in
kind of thing.
sophistication.
Absolutely. So, you know, let's I like really want to get to the meat and potatoes of what we're all about, which is, how to prevent all of these attacks. So, can you provide us with a little bit of like statistical knowledge when it comes down to it, and then go into like, the attacks themselves?
Sure. Anthony, do you want to go into the stats?
Yeah, so the stats, let's go into a couple of stats over here, which is pretty prevalent. Let's talk about the, ransomware attacks here. So ransomware, and we just pulled this off from IBM did a massive cybersecurity analysis and the attacks. And if you take a look at ransomware, 66% of organizations 2024 got hit. The average ransom paying now, you're looking at $925,000. That is US dollars. That is not Canadian dollars. So
Anthony,
understand that these,
I have a question for that as well. I just want to make sure we quantify it. This isn't just big organizations. This is small, medium, and large, right?
That's right.
they pry upon anybody. Once they get an attack on in, they'll get to understand the size and scope of the organization and then determine. Some of them will not determine evaluation. Let's say how much, we just attacked a $30 million company. They'll start off at a X amount. And they're not looking at size, they're looking at payout. They don't care about your size. At the end of the day, they want a payout. And if you're a small entity with under 12 people or even 10 people or 5 people, nobody can afford to pay $1 million. No one can afford it. So the chances of an attack of such magnitude to be paid out is virtually zero. It usually leads to a bankruptcy, or if you don't have insurance coverage for this, you're pretty much toast in many ways. So, it's not a threat that we are trying to obviously say there is a threat out there. At the same time, we're trying to make it aware that these are actually occurring and they're getting more sophisticated. The numbers with ransomware happening, whether you go on a wrong web page or an email or an attack through a back door because of a piece of software that wasn't updated or the operating system that wasn't updated. These attacks occur. And then, how many devices are out there? Let's talk about the construction industry. How many devices are out there that are considered IoT? They are little devices that the construction industry for tracking progress, whether they're phones, tablets, GPS signals, they're all subject to attacks because they're not protected. There is not one piece of software that is protecting these devices. And yet, the perpetrators have found ways to attack this through AI. So these attacks that occur they're occurring 400%. And in the construction industry, it is the second most industry that's being attacked now in terms of growth because of lack of coverage, because of lack of cybersecurity protocols. I mean, let's talk about the industry. So in the construction industry, there's a health and safety that they have to follow, which is a physical mandate that they have to go through and abide by the protocols and the rules. We have to do the same in cybersecurity. You have to put a health and safety check with respects to your equipment, your network, your technology that you are using across multiple platforms in various locations. And if they're not protected, they're going to find an exploit. And to make matters worse, someone's going to make a mistake called a human error factor. And that human factor does not tie into this equation. So let's go one step further. 74% of all cyber attacks are due to human error. That's alarming. And the fact that you're not even covered amplifies that to a point being, my God, where do we go from here? What do we do? So we have to take a look at different avenues of installing cybersecurity protocols, methodologies, education, and start making people aware that this is something that we should be concerned about.
So I guess I want to, just in defense of all of us Luddites and stuff, as I said, I was the victim of one of these attacks, but it came from a legit email. It came from a legit address. I was expecting a file from this director. Like, it was so uncanny that when I opened it, I was shocked that I was a victim of all of this stuff. How, like, what is it that we can do? I just want to make sure that, like, our members understand that, it's cyber attacks, and you're talking about the level of sophistication. How can, organizations and individuals protect themselves from all these attacks? Because you're starting to freak me out just by the stats that you're given here. So I need to make sure that we as an industry, especially if we're the second most prevalent when it comes down to the source of attacks for people wanting to, how do we protect ourselves?
Well, the first point of entry is emails. If you ask me what is the first point of entry, it's definitely emails. Like 90% come through emails.
So no more emails from now on, is what you're saying.
Well,
We're
I mean,
canceling emails.
if you want the perfect protection, say don't answer email, shut your computer down, and let's talk via the phone. But that's not the real world. The real world is that communication process, transactions, whether it being contracts, financial transactions, all occur through emails. Okay, and what a great way to obtain a financial reward, to fooling or personifying somebody else to obtain this information. And as what Colby was saying was, I'm now personifying you. So how do I do that? So once I have an attack on an establishment, I get through to their email system. I've now compromised their email system. I now send out through AI 1,000 or 2,000 emails out, and which can be done in a matter of minutes. It's coming from Giovanni because your email was compromised.
Right.
Okay,
so
now
just to go ahead.
And what ends up happening is that your information looks viable. It is your email address. There is a digital tracking mechanism that it came from your email. I'll let Colby go into more technical aspect on that.
Yeah, I mean, a few things to add there. Even if we take a step back and just look at, the two major prongs of approach to handling these situations is one being a technical deployment of something that's defensive and proactively defensive nowadays, like some piece of software, some agent that's running on the corporate network that's monitoring and helping the organization continue to do business. The other major aspect is the largest, weakest link in this entire picture, which is a human element. The staff and the team, making sure they're up to speed. And there's a culture around this team and the staff that's built to be aware of the types of attacks, email hygiene, technology hygiene. Those are like the two kind of elements and approach to safeguarding from these kind of attacks that are increasing in sophistication. It's a lot coming. It's happening really fast. So we have to balance between elevating the education and awareness of the staff, but also we can't rely on it entirely because just of the speed. Like, we're in the industry, we see how fast things are moving and how sophisticated things are getting. Only if we have another piece of technology, sort of like, MAD, like mutually assured destruction. Like, we both have, the bad actors are using the latest and greatest tech. We also have to use the latest and greatest tech in order to mitigate and create a defense boundary around the organization. So it's a two-prong approach.
So Kobe, from what I'm hearing, just having something like an antivirus program running in the background isn't enough. Simply because Anthony had mentioned AI, and I don't think antivirus deals with that whole AI
No,
component, right?
no,
And I really appreciate the fact that there's the education piece that
yes,
has to be done. I think that, to your point, we're process oriented in construction, right? We, again, Anthony mentioned about the health and safety and how we go through checklists and make sure that, we do a hazard assessment before, we step foot on a site, do a walk around in a vehicle before we say it's okay to drive away on. So this is
that's
the
right.
kind of thing that, you guys are recommending for our members to follow. Like, is there an easy kind of like checklist kind of thing where it comes down to, these are how you'll provide defenses against cyber attacks? Is it like a step by step, you know, um, uh, install antivirus, check, for ask to make sure that this person sent me this email? How does it work? Like, can you walk us through some of the things that we can do to provide that defensibility?
Sure.
So,
Go ahead,
so I'll
Anthony.
let Paul get. So we developed a process to help with that scenario. So we can go through what is called as a spreadsheet with questions and answers, but we also have developed a sophisticated piece of software where we go in and we do a scope. And what the scope does, it presents us with all the loopholes, deficiencies, exploits, problematic areas in a network or in a computer system. So this spits out a detailed report and tells us, for example, is your firewall is outdated, your protocols in antivirus are updated, your operating system is updated. Any exploit that's available, it will spit it out. So this sophistication of doing such a scope really is the first way to start preventing attacks from occurring. So we call this, and we call this tracker. What tracker does is it goes on a hunt. It goes on a hunt to look at what are the vulnerabilities in the network. So the first thing we have to understand is where you are vulnerable. So most people don't understand where they are vulnerable. It could come through their webpage. It could come through their domain. It could come through an email. It could come through a computer that has not been updated. But even if I give you a checklist, you say, yes, we have a firewall. Yes, we have an antivirus. Conventional methods and wisdoms do not prevent a cyber attack that is designed and created by an AI. It'll blow right by it. In fact, labs have shown that within 37 to 40 minutes, with just meager conventional methods, it will get in. That's alarming. So
Hmm.
if you have just a basic antivirus and not follow through on some of the safety checks and valves that need to be addressed, and you need to do, as Kobe said, and I'll let him go on, is the technical hygiene. And this is really important to go through. Step-by-step process. It's very time consuming. It requires a lot of labor. Let's have something that can do this instantaneously, that will spit your report within 24 to 48 hours and tell you all your deficiencies and address them and tell you how to remediate them quickly. These are the
Yeah, and
kind of tools that is required.
just to add like a little bit further to that, to what Anthony was saying is, uh, to get started, there's always like some type of preliminary scan of your whole environment that shows all the vulnerabilities, shows what's lacking, what you're doing good at, what you should continue doing, both from a technical standpoint of all the devices on your corporate network that talk to the internet or have the internet and devices out on the internet talk back to those devices, but also the employee and the team element. So we do a preliminary scan that looks at all of that, and that tells us what we need to focus on right away, what's critical, what's high risk, and what's maybe a lower risk. And you could think about the technical aspect in two regards. One is your internet perimeter. So any device, and this is a growing number, any device that talks to the internet directly. But then there's also within the organization, within the corporate network, where Sam might send something to the printer, which is sort of internal. But when Sam sends something to the printer, he could unknowingly send ransomware to that printer. So you need some kind of agent to detect and continuously monitor your internal network, but also anything coming from the outside, from the internet. And then on the other side is training your staff to increase the awareness level, um, which isn't a brand new thing. So employee training around these things have been around for at least a decade now. The difference is the sophistication and the context. The context aware phishing and social engineering attacks that are possible now, you can't use the same kind of training mechanisms to train for the new level of sophistication. That those training elements need to become more sophisticated and evolve. So, one of the pretty neat parts about our platform is when employees are getting trained for their technical hygiene, it's taking into account the context of that organization. So let's say it's the OGCA. So our training material will automatically start to understand what the OGCA typically sees and transacts and get a full understanding of the business organization, and then auto create material to train your staff based on the information that they're used to seeing. And that's done using our own AI, so that when a bad actor uses other AI to do something malicious, we've already kind of got our employees or our team up to speed as to what kind of stuff they can expect from a sophisticated attack.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you do a preemptive strike basically on the system with your own AI to see and analyze any of the weak points
That's
throughout. Then what you do is you go in and you prepare these weak points, or you eliminate them per se, right? So I'm thinking to myself, well, that's good and all, but what if I just use like multi-factor authentication? Isn't that enough? Like, why can't I just put that on? Won't I be protected if I do that two-stage process? Is that good enough, or is the AI attack sophisticated enough to bypass something like that?
Yeah, I mean, number one, like 2FA isn't available for absolutely everything, unfortunately. 2FA is a really, really good way to uh, slow down the attacks. But to answer your question, has 2FA been circumvented already? The answer is yes. There's various different kinds, SMS being one of them, and then you have things like the YubiKey, which is a hardware device, and then you have something you might be more familiar with, like Google Authenticator or Microsoft
Yeah.
Authenticator and the RSA tokens. Um, all of these, depending on the sophistication and the desire to attack an organization, can be circumvented. So what Anthony was saying before is like nowadays it doesn't matter what size of organization you are. Before, how an attack would sort of be procured is they would look at all their possible targets, look at what's the juiciest fruit to squeeze, go after that one. Now it's not like that. Now it's conducted using AI, which is smart enough to just point and shoot everywhere. It's like a shotgun approach. They look at the fruits that they've shot down, and now they can see which one they want to go further into. You know what I mean? So that it's a different approach. It's like a blanket approach. Everyone gets attacked. Everyone's just a number in this system. And then they go by stats to see, okay, this company is worth, they're a publicly traded company. Let's short their stock and let's send them some ransomware. You know what I mean? So that's sort of where we're going.
So no one's safe is basically what I'm hearing. This is
And honestly, to put it into context, I'm just going to give one reference I think most people in the industry have heard of. It's called City of Hamilton. The city of Hamilton experienced probably one of the largest attacks that literally wiped out and did ransomware on, I would say, probably about 98% of their information. if not 100, and they are still rebuilding. And they're trying to grasp as to what hit them and how it hit them. These perpetrators are smart. You know, they're not going to just sit back and say, okay, we got one here. Let's move on. They sit and wait. It is a waiting. It's a patient waiting game for them. They have AI. They can use an AI attack. They can go in, as Kobe mentioned, scope the entire network, ascertain bits and pieces of information, whether it being external, meaning the internet, how it communicates out to the internet, or we're being internal. How does it communicate internally? And it transfers that information. And what it starts to do is it starts to go into network discovery. And it looks for those little juicy tidbits that I can say, hey, I can hide myself here. When it's time, I will unleash. Or I can bury my tracks through this door. I can go in and out at will without anybody detecting it. And this becomes a massive, massive problem. Because when something becomes undetectable, you're pretty much at the mercy of the attacker.
Okay, Ante, I need you to kind of like walk me through this, because I understand that, Hamilton gets attacked, blah, blah, blah. They've now cleaned up everything. But what I'm hearing from you is that there could be residual files or something left in their servers, their system, the individual computers of people that work for the city of Hamilton, that they just lie in wait until, such time that they can trigger it again. And it could be days, weeks, months, or even years. But then it kicks in, and now you're in the same position that you were beforehand, or you're infiltrating, where you're pulling relevant information from the system without anyone's knowledge. How do you defend against this?
I'll let Colby go into more of the sophistication of the scrubbing process, but I'll tell you this from a statistical standpoint. Once you've been attacked once and you don't put proper procedures, mechanisms, and protocols in place, the perpetrator has more than an 80% chance of coming back.
Okay, Kobe, help me out. How do you defend against this? I'm having heart palpitations right now just listening to you guys.
Unfortunately, there's no like absolute answer how to completely stop it unless you're working in a bunker with no internet connectivity and no light. But so it's always going to be a proactive game of readiness for when something gets through. We can build as much buffer as possible, but unless like all the employees are well aware of how to have some hygiene around this, and the technical aspect is covered, it's always up to date, all those things could be in place, and you could still get attacked. So if you still get attacked, what you need to do is have a backup mechanism that is completely what's called air gapped from your day-to-day systems. And then there's a recovery process, which in the Hamilton escapade, they didn't have. And now they were scrambling. Or it wasn't air gapped, so even the backup systems got compromised, and now they're in a really bad situation. The best thing to do always is to have up-to-date software that's running on your systems, that has evolved with the evolution of the attacks that are occurring. Norton, McAfee nowadays will not cut it. Antivirus is just it's old, it's dated, it's legacy now. You have to have something more organic, more contextually aware. That's the only way to stay on top of things. And I'm not sure if we actually defined ransomware enough during this conversation, but just to iterate on what that is you receive an email, you receive an image from a friend. Embedded into that email or image is some executable code that either encrypts your device so you can no longer use it, or it spreads throughout the network and finds the servers where there's important data and encrypts that, and forces you to pay ransom in some kind of usually cryptocurrency to decrypt your system so you can continue business again. So you're losing in two ways in that front. You're losing because you're going to pay out this ransomware, and you have business discontinuity happening. So the figures in terms of how much damage this has cost you financially is astronomical. Unless you have like a fail-safe backup in place ready to go in these situations.
So this is, from what I'm hearing and everything, this goes back to your original point about the education piece. To me, it sounds like, that's kind of like the kink in the iron, that if you don't have a proper education piece. So walk me through a little bit about like why it's so important about the education, especially when it comes down to cybersecurity. I also want to touch right afterward about the insurance piece, and because you had mentioned it, but let's first start with the education piece. I want to like really walk through it. How can we like is if I have a proper hygiene program, checklist, whatever, and I follow it to the letter, will I be protected? Just question.
Anthony,
It
you want to take that
depends.
one?
Yeah, it depends on the level of protection that you have. So let's walk through a typical email that comes on in, right? You take a look at it, it could be laced with ransomware, it could not be laced with ransomware, it could be a phishing attack, it could be spam. So now what we're looking for is sometimes, as Kobe mentioned before, is you don't need to respond to that email. You just simply need to open it. If it's auto open, the executable file the payload gets delivered. The ransomware gets delivered and it goes on a hunt. So cybersecurity, going back from the beginning in terms of putting a proper defense mechanism for emails, first and foremost, is crucial. So that is number one priority. Upon that being implemented, the second most crucial aspect is training of the employees. So how do we go around and training the employees? Well, we can do seminars, we can do video presentations, but we've developed something that's a bit of a unique process with respects to training that is live, that is real time. So when an email comes up, a banner appears. It says, we're not quite liking what this person is saying, or you don't get this email quite often from this individual. You better check it. So now this banner that comes up that's highlighted, the user now is engaged. It's starting to learn. The user is now being educated, saying, whoa, what is this? Well, now the user, rather than making a human error, it takes the time to look at that. And this small seconds of looking at that email is very prevalent to an attack happening or not. It can say, look, delete it. I don't know who you are. I don't think you are a viable person. Or the email inside in terms of the verbiage says it's not matching to how a person communicates. And again, we're going back to our platform. Our AI looks at that verbiage and says, this is not how the person communicates. This is not how a proper email comes across. So
hold on. I want to walk you. I want to walk through that. So you're telling me that the system that you have can pick up on the tone, like and how the individual writes, and is it grammatical? Is it the way the cadence? How does it search? I'm just curious because this sounds fascinating, and no, and I'm saying this simply because I know that what most people what they do is like accept yes to terms and conditions in order to access a website. Everyone automatically says yes. They don't actually read any of the terms and conditions. Would this be similar in an email where it says unrecognized? It could be something problematic. Would people just ignore it is the question. Now, does that then lead back to the education piece where you have to make sure that it's drilled into their head that they have to check every single piece?
Yeah, there are two aspects to that. Like our system is contextually aware of the language, style, tone, demeanor, all of the above, because it goes through a process of learning how people are communicating from the organization to the organization. Um, and that's very easy. Like everyone knows ChatGPT exists nowadays. They know how easy it is to uh, create or generate natural language in the style of anybody, in the style of Steve Jobs, in the style of my mom, and the style of your son. It doesn't matter, right? Anything could be kind of imitated. So our system does a great job of recognizing that it could be a suspicious email that's not coming from the email that you typically deal with, but the writing style is exactly like who you used to communicate with. So why is there a discrepancy there? If you weren't technically aware to look at the technical embedded information in the email, so there's always a from address, there's always a to address. But beyond that, there's something called email headers, which is a technical piece of the email that you don't typically see, but you can drill down into it if you'd like to, and you're technically savvy, and you can look at where specifically this email came from. It came from Giovanni, but the IP address embedded says Giovanni was in, I don't know, China. And why is that? Does that make sense? It doesn't really, if you're getting 100 emails a day, you're not going to do that for each one, unfortunately. And we understand that. So does our system. So our system does that piece for you. And that's a small technical piece of how you could further assess the email. But there's many, many more. And so the technical element, we alleviate the users from doing it all day long. But we still have to increase enough awareness so that if our system or a system that is deployed misses something, that the employees still not just ignoring what could be and taking a better look at it. So it will increase the employees' awareness, but also use a system to technically assess the email that's coming in.
So I'm hearing it has to be in conjunction with, a system per se. Not only the education piece, but you have to have something there, because without it, the education piece is useless, basically, right? Like no matter what, without having the defense mechanisms in place, it's a sieve. Even if you have people who are educated and know, you can still hide stuff,
You
in
could.
emails and what.
The only caveat with that I would love to raise is that from a business perspective, 100%, like you need both. But outside the business, when you go home, those technical defense mechanisms may not exist in your home, in your parents' home, and wherever. But the awareness that you've been taught or trained upon from your business, that you could take home with you, that you could share with your family and friends, that is like they're with you all day as long as you're paying attention to it.
So based on so now I have another question, because Anthony touched on this earlier. I just want to get back to it. You said construction has a lot of tools, a lot of products that are connected through the Internet of Things to mainframes, to databases, to all that stuff, including things like sensors and whatnot that can be hacked. What about something that everyone has, like cell phones? You know what I mean? Like I look at this and I go, like, are cell phones a possible way for people to get into our information? Because people have bank cards on their phones, they have all your contacts on your phones. Like, is that something that we need to look at to protect as well?
In terms of attacks, it is the number one growth avenue of attacks, via being SMS attacks, redirections of people going on a web page and getting redirected to malicious sites, downloading of malicious apps, to then be able to ascertain all the information inside the phone or your banking information. The list goes on. So if you take basically a cell phone is a miniature computer that not only has access to the internet, but access through cellular towers, which has data. There's data communicating consistently through cell towers. So to underestimate cell phones is not a method of attack, we'd be really fooling ourselves. And I said, I'll let Kobe go into more technical detail on it, but cell phones now have become, it's going to be something in the $1 trillion where attacks are going to occur. And it's a ticking time bomb. because most people rely on a tablet or a cell phone to do a great deal percentage of their business, whether it's being email, a financial transaction, with a bank app. I mean, it just becomes a necessity for them to do business from day to day. It's a tool, but that tool is now exposed, and it's exposed in many various formats that it just continues to grow.
Yeah. Just to further to add to that is BYOD, bring your own device, which is pretty common for most businesses. You know, you take a non-technical business like a bakery, um, they're gonna, you know, now you have e-commerce, now you have a few other things that the bakery might have instilled to become more relevant as the demographic, as the customers change. What I'm trying to say is like more businesses, even if they weren't a technical business, they become more and more technical because they have to keep up with the times. And all the staff that work or the team around it, they bring their own device, BYOD, and they have their company email on that device. But they also have their Facebook, their their personal email, their Instagram, their TikToks, whatever, and all that is communicating information back and forth through the same device that also hosts your corporate assets or your corporate email. And that's where the big challenge or the big opportunity for attack gets created, because you might have all the defense mechanisms just corporate, but because you're sharing a device with personal and corporate, and there's like tools and different approaches to how to handle that situation, but at a minimum there needs to be something to monitor it, because there could be overlap between where you're getting attacked or spammed on the personal side now creeping over to the corporate, all on the same device.
So I do remember conversation not too long ago, well, actually a long time ago, with Anthony about um, accessing like Wi-Fi eavesdropping. Can you like tell me a little bit, or tell the participants a little bit about this eavesdropping? From what I understand, it's unsecure Wi-Fi that like we get at like Starbucks or Timmy's or something like that, and that's a means for people to hack into our phones, our computers, that kind of stuff. Is that correct? Am I understanding the concept?
Yep, I mean, I could put a little device next to your office that says OGCA. Anyone can do it, right? I can create a mobile hotspot using my own smartphone, call it OGCA, but it's a rogue hotspot. It like unless the employee knows which one exactly to select, they might connect to mine, which I will siphon information all day long looking for something interesting. You don't know that you're not connected to the right network. And that's like a very simple example. And that could be at a Starbucks, that could be at a Tim Hortons, or at a public Wi-Fi at the airport. Unless you're being diligent on to what you're connecting to, people can eavesdrop from a rogue network.
So the AI programming that you're talking about to defend and stuff, does this also extend to cell phones? Does it extend to like, we as users, I understand if I put it on my laptop, I'm good, but then all the other things, does this proliferate to all devices?
Yes, yeah, all devices that connect to the internet.
So
So
whether it be an Apple device, an Android device, a Windows device, a Linux device, a Mac device, we have all the proper tools to make sure our clients and people who join on board are protected. It's really important. They have to understand that with any digital asset that they have, looking at only one aspect of a digital asset is just not enough. You have to look at the whole grand scheme of things, especially. I mean, let's talk about the construction industry. I mean, how many people are on sites or on the phone sending pictures, sending diagrams, checking devices, or monitoring little monitoring devices at a given time? It's crazy. And then if it's a personal phone sending corporate information back and forth, and maybe they can't, maybe their cell tower is not working, and then they go into a Wi-Fi tower. an open source Wi-Fi, and they start transmitting information. It becomes a point of attack, a point of entry. To underestimate this again is I think we're really fooling ourselves in terms of what the perpetrators can now do. You would have talked about this about 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago. I said you're crazy. But now today, I would say it's just as good as an attack as anywhere else. I mean, we always say, like, what was the percentage of someone getting into a car accident 30 years ago versus today, and how many people are on the road? Well, the percentage increases. It's no different in the digital assets. This is going to increase. It's not going to go away. It has no reason to go away because the attackers are gaining financial rewards on this.
And you had mentioned the level of sophistication of the attacks is increasing exponentially as well.
Correct. Even
And
on the
so,
phone.
yeah, well, and so like this is where I'm thinking holistically as well. We have to make sure that from a corporate aspect, we've protected, and I guess if you bring your own device, it's extended to their devices as well. It has to be in order to make sure that your company is safe, unless they only have to use company phones. And then what if, I've seen guys walk around with two phones. They look like, they're drug dealers, but that's another story altogether. But what I'm saying is that when you have two phones, you have one corporate, one personal. Is that enough division between church and state type thing in order to protect someone? Or, could there be like, if I happen to check a Gmail on my company phone, now is there the possibility of being, that backdoor approach type thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to add to that. If you as a company can afford to give all your employees a second company corporate phone, that's a dollars and cents thing. Some companies can do it. Most cannot do it.
Right.
So now, so that's one solution. It does a recognizable job at mitigating this. But because most companies do BYOD, we still need a solution there, which, we provide solution for both. But there's a two steps, and it's a dollars and cents thing, what it boils down to.
The cost benefit analysis of looking at such um, a system in terms of you bringing a BYOD versus the cost of losing that information, you really have to sit down as a company and say is, look, although we are allowing the employee's personal asset to ascertain our information, we need to protect that information. And there's a cost to protecting that information versus to what the cost is of it being exposed or held ransom. So when you're doing a cost benefit analysis, you have to say, okay, is it worth, I don't know, I'm going to say, is it worth $40? Is it worth $50? I mean, these are questions that organizations have to sit down and say, well, we're not giving them a phone. Therefore, if I'm not giving them a phone, that's a cost and not an asset. Okay, but when you give a corporate phone, you are protecting it with your services.
Right.
Okay, so now you say, okay, so we're eliminating the cost of the phone. Now, is it worth to protect that person's phone because it has our digital information? I can't tell a customer how to spend their money. I can't tell a business how to spend their money. I can tell you what the end result will be if they don't protect it. And the end result being is that sooner or later, a mistake will occur and an attack will get through.
So I haven't even noticed the time. I apologize. I've just been engrossed in our conversation over here, and so we have a couple of minutes left before the top of the hour. I'd like to both open up the floor to any questions at all that our attendees might have, but I also want for the both of you, can you please like give us a quick summary, a takeaway, if you will, of what our members should remember from this conversation? We got nothing. What's going on? What I understood from you guys was
I believe, in my honest opinion, I think anything that comes out of this webinar, you have to go back and say, are we covered enough? Are we ready for AI attacks? Are we in a situation that we don't have our information vulnerable? Vulnerable meaning internally and externally. Do we have enough mechanisms, protection mechanisms, education, defense hardware that is going to protect our digital assets? Or do we have to sit down and realize that we need to make some sort of investment in protecting our digital assets? And again, this is a cost scenario that most companies have to sit down and analyze. And when they're doing such an analysis, I think they have to understand being is that what is the cost if they don't protect themselves versus the cost of protecting themselves? This is the message that we need to get across. I don't think whether it's being a 3-person entity or a 1,000-person entity. At the end of the day, there is a cost of doing business and there is a cost of protecting yourself. And this boils down to is what is important to the corporation and what direction they need to do in terms of protecting themselves, especially with the increase of attacks and the sophistication of the attacks. What was prevalent 2 years ago in terms of equipment and software may be pretty much outdated. Standards are evolving, they're changing. NIST, which is a national standard that is used globally around the world, keeps rewriting the book because it's just the evolution of the attacks. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, organizations, have to say what is in our best interest. What are we going to learn from this webinar? Do we go back to the drawing board and look at what needs to be done to protect our digital assets? Are we doing enough? Are we educating enough? Or are we a shortfall?
So on that point about, looking at your digital assets and assessing, how often should they be assessing? Once a year, every 6 months, or, should this be something, I guess it depends on the size of the organization, it depends on your threat, your exposure. Like what is a good rule of thumb, just out of curiosity?
I think I would say if your business relies on the internet, then you should be focusing on cybersecurity. And, just nail down a little bit further there is, before you would think, oh, now we have so much internet facing operations that it's time we look at cybersecurity and defense elements. And depending on the size of company you are, it may not make sense for you to hire a full-time cybersecurity person or have like a full security expert on your team. You might only have a corporate IT person that knows a little bit about cybersecurity, but probably not to the sophistication that they need to at this point. One of the things I'd love to leave the group with at the end of this is like, you have a lot of options now. There's tools that you don't necessarily need to hire a full-time, chief security officer or a security expert to be within your team as a person full-time to handle all these things. There's tools like ours that exist that lets you that scales with your company in terms of a cost perspective, but also gives you all the coverage you need in an evolving environment.
And it's not to say that, those that do have, security officers on the cyber side, they could also benefit from this, because what
Yes.
I'm hearing from you guys is that this scales to the size of the company, and pursuant to that, it assists the company because it's always working in the background 24/7, all 365 days a year. That to me is like more peace of mind than the how we started the conversation, which is you're so exposed, and you gave me heart palpitations. But overall, I'm just going to check to make sure that we have any questions in the chat. We are reaching the top of the hour. I do realize that, the conversation, we've been incredibly engrossed in this, and I want to thank both Anthony and Kobe for your participation this morning, for the education to our members. This video will also be packaged up and put onto YouTube, and it can be shared. We're happy to have any further questions. I see that Anthony and Kobe have their email addresses on site. If anyone has any further questions, they can do so directly. We have hit the 11 o'clock hour, and gentlemen, I just want to thank you very much for the enlightening and educating piece that you gave us today. This webinar has been, if nothing, I think I got to go calm down, find my Zen state again because of the possibility of constant threats. But it's good to know that you can fight fire with fire. So
That's
based
right.
on that, thank you very much for your time this morning.
We appreciate the time, and we hope that we can help in any way possible for the members. And if they have questions, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to answer any questions or concerns that they have with respect to cybersecurity.
Excellent.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure. And thank you all the attendees that attended this morning. We'll follow up with everyone. Ciao.